All right. It was a slow news week, so we are leaning into it. This week, we're going to focus on lots of listener questions and comments, but we do still have a few interesting stories about Mozilla, AMD, and some sketchy smart TVs on This Week in Privacy number 59, so stick around.
Welcome back to This Week in Privacy, our weekly series where we discuss the latest updates with what we've been working on within the Privacy Guides community, and this week's top stories in data privacy and cybersecurity. I'm Jordan, and with me this week is Nate. How are you, Nate?
I'm good. Felt like it was both a fast and short week. How have you been?
Yeah, it definitely feels like this week has been a lot slower than one of the slowest weeks we've had in a very long time. Let's just say that. So yeah, we can dive right into some listener questions here. Why don't you take the first one?
Yeah, sure thing. So, like I said, we're doing things a little bit differently this week. Just trying something new. Let us know what you guys think. But we're going to start off this week, since this is kind of a Q&A episode, with some of our listener questions. We'll kind of intersperse those as we go. But first up, we're going to pull from the forum. And one of the questions we got this week was, are there any privacy advantages to using a desktop operating system, such as Linux, Mac, or Windows, over GrapheneOS? And they said the only thing they can think of is that the Tor browser seems to be better at anti-fingerprinting on desktop, but I don't have conclusive evidence of that, just a few tests I've run myself. So yeah, in my opinion, the way that I always explain these things to people is that phones are more secure, from what I understand, just in general, especially graphene for sure. But phones are more secure, whereas computers are a lot more flexible. I think it was I don't know if it was Kerry Parker or one of his guests one time, but basically they were talking about cell phones, and they said that from a security perspective, we kind of took all the mistakes that we learned from computers and applied them to phones when we started making smartphones. So smartphones have really good sandboxing. They're really good. I think they're technically an immutable distribution. Personally, I've never seen a smartphone update fail and then like the whole phone bricks. It just knows how to kind of like roll back, stuff like that. So phones are really good at that. The drawback is you don't really have as much flexibility in terms of being able to things like, for the most part, installing alternate operating systems. That's kind of something that only a few Androids can do. Or like you said, like certain like I know with iOS, you're stuck using the like all the browsers are based on WebKit except in Europe. So it's definitely harder to get privacy on a phone. And then of course I forgot to mention, there's the SIM card tracking you everywhere, cell tower. So it's definitely harder to do privacy on a phone, but they are more secure. So it's definitely a trade-off there. Yeah, but privacy advantages specifically, I think most desktops will have that, especially with some tweaking. Maybe not Windows, but yeah. Those are kind of my thoughts on that one. Did I miss anything?
Yeah, no, all good thoughts. I think I agree with everything you said, but also like I think sometimes it's you need to think about the specific situation for what you need, right? Like maybe you need, like the Tor browser, for example, you did mention that like it does offer better fingerprinting protection on desktop, right, compared to the Android app. That is one like small increase, I think. It depends, like, if you need that level of protection, then maybe you should be using a desktop or like Tails OS or something like that. But I think as well, we think about like privacy on macOS and Windows is definitely nowhere near what it is on GrapheneOS, because everything is, there's not any telemetry basically. So I think you kind of got to weigh up what you want, right? Like you can have some level of security and privacy with GrapheneOS, whereas if you're using a Windows computer or a Mac OS computer, you can have some level of security, but you're not going to have any privacy. And like, well, not any privacy, but you're going to have less privacy than using a GrapheneOS phone. And I think one thing that also kind of limits you is because Google kind of has a lot of control over Android. Like it's hard to get apps outside the Google Play Store, which kind of funnels you into using Google. It's also becoming like a lot harder to actually make a Google account without providing like personally identifiable information. So, you got to think about it like that as well. I think desktop operating systems have that benefit, right? Like they are more decentralized. Like with macOS, you just download a DMG file. With Windows, you download an exe, and then Linux is kind of a different situation. But it's yeah, there's definitely a funnel of things. Like if you're using Google Play services on GrapheneOS, I think you're definitely going to be taking a hit from a privacy perspective because you are having to log in. Well, you don't have to log in, but like like you probably are going to want to if you want to download apps, right? So yeah, that's kind of my thought on it. Kind of depends on what you want and what you need. Like you can't use a GrapheneOS phone to like edit videos or play video games. So I think you might need to just tailor your devices to what you actually need.
Yeah, for sure. And yeah, that's a really good point about like a desktop OS, from especially from like a telemetry perspective. Like there are certain things that desktop can do better. Like, we keep talking about the Tor fingerprinting thing, but to be fair, that was a really good point. I left out like a lot of telemetry, for example, which things like Graphene reduce by default or like proxy through the Graphene servers first. So it really depends specifically what kind of privacy you're looking for sure. But yeah. Hello to our first two people who have hopped in, and welcome to the chat. But we did actually have a few stories this week. Unless you had anything else you wanted to add to that question, I think we can jump into our first story.
Yeah, sounds good. Let's jump into the first story here. I guess this is a update, I suppose, because we've talked about Mozilla quite a bit here, and to say we are critical might be an understatement, but here's kind of like what's going on at Mozilla at the moment. Announcing Mozilla.org. The web is evolving, so are we. Earlier this month, we stood up Mozilla.org, a new 501c3 nonprofit created to steward the long-term success of the Mozilla project. Over the last year or so, like I guess this is from Mark Sermon, who I think is like are pretty high up at Mozilla. Over the last year or so, I've said a lot about how AI is reshaping the web and how we need to simultaneously stand up for the open internet Mozilla helped to build and shape what the internet is becoming in the AI era. This is a huge and urgent challenge. So I think a lot of people here will be kind of confused by this. I think Mozilla's corporate structure is kind of confusing. Like they have the Mozilla Foundation, which is like a nonprofit, and then the Mozilla Foundation owns the Mozilla Corporation, and it's like all this sort of complicated stuff. So I guess we can scroll down here. We have created Mozilla.org to pull all of the different pieces of Mozilla together. It will act like a strategic endowment, allocating funding, managing our brands, and shaping long-term strategy to ensure every part of Mozilla is well set up to advance the vision outlined in the Mozilla Manifesto. And if we're successful, it will help all of the pieces of Mozilla add up to more than the sum of their parts. This is an important milestone for Mozilla, the challenge of fusing the values of the Mozilla Manifesto into this next era of the internet is huge. This updated structure will make it easier to nimbly direct our resources and orchestrate our actions to step up to this challenge. So this is kind of confusing, right? So they explain it more here. All of Mozilla's organization remains under the umbrella of the 501c3 Mozilla Foundation, with a new nonprofit operating the Mozilla portfolio of organizations on its behalf. So I guess throwing it back to Nate here, because I don't really feel like I have a huge amount to add more to this. This is just like a corporate restructuring, I guess, and I'm not really sure. I think Mozilla's been making weird decisions recently as well, so I'm not really sure how I feel about this, to be honest.
Yeah, I was really confused by this because Jonah did a little bit more digging when we shared this in the group chat, and it seems like this isn't really because my first thought was like, okay, they're doing like the Proton thing, right? Where there's like a foundation that holds the overall organization, and that way it's like it ensures that the for-profit arm always has to act ethically within accordance to the wider mission. But apparently that is not what's going on here. And so yeah, Mozilla's really weird because there's, like you said, there's the Mozilla Foundation that technically owns everything else, including this Mozilla.org thing. And then there's the Mozilla Corporation that is the for-profit arm. And I think they're also the ones that are in charge of Firefox, if I'm not mistaken. But then there's also like, what else is there? There's, let me see here. I think there's something else that controls Thunderbird. Yeah, let's see here. There's MZLA, which makes Thunderbird. There's Mozilla Ventures, which is probably one of our, me personally at least, is one of my biggest targets of criticism. It's their venture capital arm, which invests in startups, which usually invests in things that to a lot of us seem very counter to Mozilla's mission, like an ad company that they claim is privacy preserving and all kinds of crap. And then there's Mozilla.ai, which is what it sounds like. And of course, none of us are super crazy about that, I think. I don't know. Yeah, Mozilla. I need you all to understand, I'm very critical of Mozilla. And it's because I want them to be better. It's one of those things where like I don't take joy in watching Mozilla be stupid, for lack of a better way to put it. It's one of those things where it's like I'm mad because I want them to be better. I want Firefox to have wider adoption. Like my first browser, growing up as a teenager, I was relatively tech savvy, but not compared to a lot of people. And so I think I used Internet Explorer up until high school, when, of course, it was a girl. A girl got me using Firefox. And then I used Firefox for years until I eventually switched over to Chrome. And then that's when I got into privacy and I started using other browsers. But like, so I have a soft spot for Firefox. It was like my first non-mainstream browser. And it was like really cool. And at the time, it did things that other browsers couldn't, up until Chrome came along. And it's so frustrating to see them. They had this amazing project that used to be trailblazing, and now it's like falling behind everybody. And it's so frustrating. And so, yeah, it's really confusing that like I said, Mozilla keeps making all these really questionable decisions. Like, they're 80% funded by Google, which I think, to their defense, I think a lot of these moves are efforts to not be so dependent on Google. They're just not doing it very well, in my opinion. And so they take way too much funding from Google. They're constantly investing in, like, one of the things they invested in was what's it called? It was an extension called Fake Spotter, which was supposed to spot fake product reviews, which is one of those things that it's like, okay, I'm sure this is a good product, but like, why is that a Mozilla thing? Like, why is this something Mozilla is investing in? Whereas like, at least the advertising thing, which was horribly handled, but the overall idea, it's like, okay, I see why this would be relevant to Mozilla. And now they're getting into AI, but the whole AI thing to me feels like a day late and a dollar short. Like, now that everybody else is like so far into the bubble that they're starting to pop, it now is when Mozilla decides to jump on the train. And they did it once again. The execution was terrible, because if you look into the privacy policy, like by default, Firefox has little chatbots in the sidebar. It's just a proxy, quote unquote proxy, for the main chatbots. And it's the reason I say quote unquote proxy is because it's not even a good proxy. It's like, you open it and it's like, okay, you can start a conversation with ChatGPT, and there's no privacy protections at all. Like, at least with things like DuckDuckGo and Leo, it's like you're still using those main models, but they host the models, or they're proxying all your requests. So like, there's a layer of privacy there. But with Mozilla, it's like, no, it just mainlines you straight to ChatGPT. There's no privacy whatsoever. They signed a deal with Perplexity, which is like an AI search engine. And it's the same thing. Like, if you read the announcement, it's like, oh, Perplexity's privacy policy applies. And it's like, what is the point of you? Like, what are you doing that's innovating or protecting my privacy in any way, shape, or form? And I'm fairly critical of DuckDuckGo, but even DuckDuckGo is doing more than you guys. And so, sorry, I know that was kind of a rant, but yeah, like, this is just another thing where it's like, what was the point of this? And what is the point? Like, why this whole mission here? What is it? It's going to like, it will act like a strategic endowment, allocating funding, managing our brands, and shaping our long-term strategy. Then what is the Mozilla Foundation doing? Like, isn't that the Mozilla Foundation's job? Like, oh, okay, you've offloaded this responsibility to them. Now what are you guys doing instead? Like, it's just, yeah, it's really confusing, and I don't understand where they're going. And again, I hate to criticize because I want them to do better, but I feel like Mozilla I feel like they have no idea what they're doing. I feel like they're just like blindly flailing around and hoping that they find something. And it doesn't feel like they have a strategy. It doesn't feel like they have a vision. It doesn't feel like they actually know what they're doing or where they're going. And yeah, I mean, again, I want to make it very clear. Pains me to say that. I want them to do better, but they keep doing crap like this. There was a brief moment, was it last year, where I was like, I thought there was actually hope because I thought they were doing some really cool things. Like they added translations to Android. They added a couple of privacy features. Like they added some stuff late last year that I'm like, okay, we're moving in a good direction. I like this. And now we're right back to this crap. So a little bit ranty, but yeah, this is really, to me, I don't know, maybe somebody at Firefox can, or Mozilla can like write in and tell me why I'm wrong, because I'm open to it. But to me, this just feels like more like I don't know, what if we changed our name? You know, that'll fix anything. So it just feels like a waste of resources to me.
I think the thing that kind of frustrates people the most about like Mozilla is like they have the money to actually do something good. Like they get all this money from Google and like all this money from, you know, people donating and stuff, and like they spend it on like the most silly stuff, like you were saying, like the Mozilla AI stuff. Like I think it kind of is a bit indicative, right? Like they added all these AI features and then they added an AI kill switch. Like, so what was the point? Like if you think people aren't going to want it, like why are you adding it in the first place? Like,
well, to be fair, they only added the AI kill switch after everybody vehemently said they don't want this crap. And actually, that is one of the few things I'll give them, is I feel like their kill switch was very well done, because there's a single button at the top to just disable AI everything, or you can go through and pick very specific, like the AI translations. I'm like, okay, that I'm down for. That I don't mind, because I think that's all done on device and stuff. But then like you can disable the AI chatbot in the sidebar that I was talking about. So it's like, that's the one thing they've done recently that I'm like, I like that. That was very well done. Although I also accept the argument that the AI probably shouldn't have been in there in the first place. So.
yeah, I think the main thing that I think like is kind of frustrating with that is like I think Mozilla is trying to be like a big tech company when like they're not. That's like the opposite of. That's why people are using Firefox. They're using Firefox because they don't want to use Google Chrome, because they don't want to use like some other big tech browser, right? Like it's like they're so unaware of like the reason people are using them. Like it's bizarre. Like, and I think that if they actually did put money into like, you know, improving things and actually making, well, you know, maybe it's paying off. Maybe all this AI stuff that they're adding is actually paying off for them. I don't know, but I personally am not interested in it at all.
Yeah, I agree. It's to me, it's also, like I said, it's the implementation. Like at least, you know, DuckDuckGo and Leo, like they do all these things where it's like there's a layer of privacy there, even if it's not enough. Like I'll accept that argument too, but it's like Firefox's AI implementation is just like, hey, here's a shortcut to Chat GPT, like, and so yeah, it's crazy. I don't know what's going on there, but I really hope they get it together, because I do like Firefox. I don't know. I like it. I would not be opposed to using it more often. I just really need them to figure it out. LeVar, the tech guy here, said Firefox now has AI tabs, or smart tabs, or whatever they're calling it. Like, yeah, that's another example where, I don't know, maybe it's me, but they have this feature where like you can group tabs together and then the AI will automatically name the tabs based on like whatever they are. And it's like, why do I really need the AI to like, and also do you really need, maybe this is one of those things where it's like marketing is everything's AI now, even when it's not AI, but it's like, do you need AI to do that? But it's weird, man. It's weird. So I don't know. I think that's all I got on that story.
Yeah, me too. Not much more to add there.
Alrighty. Well, then in that case, we'll move on to another story from AMD. And this one's pretty crazy. So this one started last week, and at the time, we didn't really talk about it because there wasn't too much to say. But now that the story has evolved a little more, it's definitely interesting. So AMD, for any audio listeners, it says, following user outcry, AMD reinstates memory encryption in consumer CPUs. So AMD has this thing called TSME, which is Transparent Secure Memory Encryption, and it encrypts the entire content stored in memory, making the data useless to adversaries performing cold boot attacks and similar intrusions requiring physical access. And I want to come back to that in a little bit. But so they say this was added about a decade ago, and it was specifically added to the high-end CPUs. But over time, they kind of started rolling it out to the lower end processors as well, including the consumer version of the Ryzen chips. And basically, I want to say it was last week or sometime within the last couple weeks. People noticed that suddenly this protection was missing from the chips. I think there's basically like a setting in the BIOS where you can go turn it on or off or whatever. And to people's credit, the way that I first heard this story is like, at first, people didn't jump to conclusions. They were rightfully asking, like, hey, where'd this go? And they reached out to some AMD employees on social media, and they were like, that's a good question. I'll see if I can find out. And eventually, they kind of clammed up, just like, I can't really say. Which, if I remember correctly, that's actually what one of them said, is like, I can't say. So is it like you don't know, or like you're not allowed? But people, kind of raised hell, and AMD basically was like, oh, okay, well, we'll bring it back. Which is great for the record. They said it'll roll out in a firmware update scheduled for July. So that's good. The interesting things to note here are, there's really no explanation why it went away in the first place. And I mean, I think you could make a very valid argument for the fact that, is, from what I understand, this was never promised to lower end CPU users. It was just kind of one of those things that it's like, oh, here, you can have it too. But when you have it for the better part of a decade, people kind of come to expect it. And this Ars Technica article noted that this has like been a real problem with big tech companies lately. Is they say once upon a time, big tech and corporations in general were willing to try to acknowledge service and product changes to ensure customers had a predictable experience. They also showed a willingness to admit mistakes and say how they plan to do better. Now there's only silence. As the company's power and dominance has mushroomed, their sense of accountability has diminished proportionally. AMD did not respond to questions sent for this story. Which is really disappointing. I have a very high opinion of AMD, and if anybody from AMD is listening, please do better in the future, because I know you can. But it's the article kind of speculates. I mean, that's all we can do, right? They didn't really say why. They did say that it's possible that this was just like a what's the word I'm looking for? Like, as their product line continues to grow, maybe. I'm struggling for the right words here. Like, basically, maybe it became a hassle to support so many chips, and that's why they kind of dropped it, which is entirely possible. But again, they never said. We don't know. They also said that, because, I mean, it's definitely an intentional thing. It's like there was a whole setting in the firmware menu that disappeared. So it's not like, oh, this toggle stopped working. It's like this toggle is gone. Like, somebody went in there and knowingly removed it. They also noted that you can make the argument that maybe this was like a performance thing, because a lot of gamers will use, I think they said like the Ryzen 9000 was the one they cited specifically. And, since encrypting and decrypting does require performance hit, a lot of people disable it. But I don't know, in my opinion, like, this is kind of my main thought that I have to share. I mean, just in general, not like this is like the big thought, but it's to me, it's like, the more tech savvy people, like the high-end pro gamers, they know how to tweak their PCs. They know how to go in, they know how to change the settings, they know how to overclock it, they know how to do all this stuff. So the fact that you could go in and disable this, in my opinion, is fine. Like, they know how to do it, and they can do it. But defaults matter. A vast number of people do not know what this thing is, do not know how to go in and enable it or disable it. I didn't know this was a thing until I read this story. And so they're just going to leave the defaults. And for the vast majority of people who, because, tech is constantly advancing, right? Like, we're at a point now where I will probably never buy anything below like an i9 or a Ryzen 9 or, nothing below 16 gigs of RAM, probably more than that now that I do video editing. And so, but back in the day, you used to get away with 8 gigs of RAM and maybe like an i5 or whatever. And so my point being is, like, it's not hard to see a world where even just the casual person is buying a computer that has one of these better chips in it just because it's on sale for Black Friday or whatever. And so they do it. And now the default is like, this encryption is enabled. And the last thing I kind of wanted to point out is, like, this protects against physical attacks, which again is one of those things that it's like, yeah, I don't think that's a huge threat for 90% of people watching this, maybe even more than that. However, when the barrier to entry is so low, why wouldn't you, right? So it's one of those things where it's like, why wouldn't you give good defaults and just turn it on and make sure it's there? And then if people want to turn it off, presumably they know what it is, they know how to do it, they know why it's causing issues, and they can go in and turn it off. Like, I don't see what was wrong with that system and why they got rid of it. But I'll end by echoing what Ars Technica said here, which is, despite AMD's continued opacity about the incident, the company deserves credit for restoring TSME. Customers complained, some bitterly, and AMD heard and granted their demands. So yeah, I mean, good on them for reversing course and fixing that. But yeah, I don't know. I think that kind of sums up all my thoughts on that one. Did you have any additional things that jumped out at you?
I definitely think I disagree with giving the company credit for restoring it. Like they're okay, so
fair enough.
They got caught, they removed a feature that like was offering protection from people, and then they restored the feature. It's like, good job for fixing a problem that you created. Like, it's not I'm not sure if they deserve credit for that. I think it's good that they actually responded and they restored it, right? Obviously that's positive, because like you said, it's like, this is like a feature that has been present on their consumer CPUs for quite a while, and it's, you know, an extra security feature that does offer some protection to people. But I think, it's just like one of those things where it feels like every company now is trying to like squeeze as much money out of you as possible, remove as many features as they can get away with. Like, it's not great for people. And especially with the prices of things at the moment, it's like, really, like, AMD, you're trying to pull a fast one on people? Like, you're trying to like remove a feature that and hope that nobody would notice? Like, it does feel a bit sneaky. And the fact that AMD didn't really come out and say like, this is something that we accidentally did, right? Or like, we didn't mean to do this, or offer an explanation. So it doesn't really seem like there was any public discussion about it, really, outside of like them giving an actual reason for why this happened. And like I said in this article by Dan Gooden, AMD did not respond to questions sent for this story. So like, I think number one is, it's good that they restored it, but also they didn't really respond and like explain why they did it in the first place. So that's not great. But you don't really get that many choices when it comes to consumer hardware. Like, what are you going to do? You're going to go with Intel? Like, it is not many options, right? Like, I think, it is, we get in these situations where we basically have almost a monopoly, right? Like, it's almost a monopoly. It's a duopoly, I guess. It's like an extremely hard industry to break into. Maybe we'll see NVIDIA do something, but then NVIDIA's also got the same problem. They're like the only company that makes super powerful like data center GPUs. So, it's I do think it is kind of a problem when all these markets get so like homogenized that, AMD could just do that and not restore it. They could just remove the feature. Like, no one could do anything about it. So yeah, it's kind of frustrating. I'm not really sure how important TSME is actually. Like, I've never seen it be a particularly sought after security feature, so I'm not really sure if this would even be that impactful from a security perspective. I think it's more about the principle of it than like the actual security benefits.
No, I agree, and that's why I pointed out that like it protects against physical attacks like cold boot, which I mean, it's maybe this is a me thing, but I'm a real big believer in rubber hose attacks, which is it's the joking colloquialism for basically like, if the cops want me, okay, maybe not the local cops, I'd stand up to the local cops, but the CIA, the NSA, the FBI, if they kidnap me and they bring me to a dark basement and they're like, what are your passwords? I'm going to start listing them off immediately because I don't have a very high pain tolerance. And like, it's just going to take them slapping me around a few times, more or less, before I'm just like, nope, I'm out. I'm done. I don't have anything that sensitive. So it's one of those things where it's like, if it was a remote exploitable thing, it'd be like, okay, this is probably more important. But I feel like that's just in general, like a really important thing with a lot of, especially when I was on surveillance report, we had a whole section dedicated to like research, and like people would always come up with these crazy proofs of concept, like, oh, they can use your phone as a speaker or as a microphone to capture like the sound of your hard drive disk spinning, and they can use that to like decrypt your encryption keys. And it's like, okay, but step one in this research was put malware on the phone. And it's like, well, yeah, at that point. And sometimes it was even like, and this required them to have your phone for like 3 hours uninterrupted. And it's like, well, yeah, of course, at that point, like all bets are off, man. So it's just really important to like keep that kind of perspective with this stuff. So yeah, I can't imagine this was like a huge security feature that saved a lot of people's data and like protected journalists in foreign countries. But I still think, like you said, it's the principle of the matter. If it was already there and there's already a way to turn it off if you don't want it, like, I don't really see what good it would have done to have gotten rid of it personally. So, but yeah, you make a really good point about like, they probably shouldn't have gotten rid of it in the first place. That was probably not a great look.
Yeah, maybe check it out. If you've got a Ryzen CPU, maybe check it out and see if it's enabled or not for you. Maybe it's a feature that you might want to enable. I don't really know. It does say here it's a feature it's like OS dependent. So I do wonder if like this is not something that works with Linux, but I could be surprised that it's not.
I thought it said it was OS independent. Did I misread that? Yeah, here it is. Unlike secure memory encryption, TSME is OS independent, a condition that makes it much easier to enable.
Oh, OS independent. Okay. I thought it said OS dependent. Okay. My bad.
Unless you're reading a different section, in which case that's just really confusing now and I don't know who's right.
No, I think you read the part that I was thinking. Yeah, no, that is good to hear then. Maybe go enable that if you haven't got it enabled.
Yeah, I mean, hopefully it's enabled by default, right? But I think I have a Ryzen in my other computer. I'll have to take a look at that.
One can hope. I guess we
Alrighty.
can dive into some side updates here. But we do have some more stories we want to talk about later today. We want to dive into some interesting stuff about smart TVs and botnets. But first, I guess we'll give a little bit of an update of what we've been working on this week, or I guess what's been going on at Privacy Guides. So, basically, last week, if you didn't see it, we launched a video for members only, members first, sorry, and it's now out this week. So on Tuesday. Yeah, on Tuesday, sometimes time zones can be tricky. On Tuesday, we released the Plex media server video, which basically, if you haven't heard already, basically they were charging $750 for a lifetime license in July. So you only have a bit of time left if you did want to get the lifetime license for, I think it was $250. So if you do want that, you should probably buy it soon because yeah, it's going to be $750, but we kind of offered a separate solution to that. You don't need to pay money, you can use Jellyfin instead. So it's kind of like a tutorial on how to get that set up. It's not really that different to Plex, to be honest. Like the whole setup process is pretty similar. And yeah, Nate kind of went through and explained a lot of the basics, I would say. It's definitely we got some interesting comments on that video. We got some feedback saying, we should have included stuff about remote access, stuff like that. And that was good to hear feedback from the community. But I think at the end of the day, the video was getting kind of long and complex. Like I already had to cut sections that were in there already. And it wasn't really super necessary, I think. A lot of people will be using this, in their own home to stream to their television and stuff like that. We did mention like port forwarding if you want access outside your home as well. So definitely give that a watch if that sounds interesting to you. But yeah, definitely was an interesting video to work on. Not really much more going on this week. As we said at the start, this week has been extremely quiet. Like we've had almost no news stories, and like we were like struggling at the last minute to try and find a story to put as the headline for this week. So yeah, kind of the vibe this week.
Yeah, I'll just add, Jellyfin is by far the easiest thing I've ever self-hosted. So even if you're new to self-hosting and you're like, I just want to kind of dip my toes in it, I would say spin up a server just as practice. Like even if you never use it, because like it literally, in my opinion, does not get any easier than that. So it would make for a great guinea pig. But yeah, I've been using Jellyfin for years. I'm super happy with it. And yeah, just to what you were saying about some of the feedback, to kind of give you guys a tiny little peek behind the curtain, I try to keep videos under 10 minutes if I can. Just because I've kind of watching the analytics, I've noticed that people kind of stop watching after about 10 minutes. So yeah, that video was already, I think it said, I've already closed the tab, but I think it was like 11 minutes and 45 seconds or something. So it was already kind of getting long. And, you know, if we talked about like, now here's how you open it up to the internet, then we have to talk about there's different ways to open it up. You can use something like Tailscale, or you can just go straight to the internet if you're insane. You know, but then there's also these concerns that like, it was just, you know, that's definitely, I think we mentioned a couple times, we do want to do a general tutorial for like general self-hosting tips that would probably include that kind of stuff. But this one was specifically like, yeah, when I saw the news about like they're doing this price hike and it's like an insane price hike, I'm like, ooh, people are going to be looking on how to switch. This would be a good time to like try to push people towards something else. So yeah, that's kind of what went into that video, but it was a lot of fun. On that note, just to let you guys know, I did wrap up a script yesterday for another video that I think Jordan is leaving some notes on, and I will check those out this weekend. But I'm excited for you guys to see that, because that's going to be a history video, you know, going over some important privacy history and cybersecurity history, and I'm excited. I think it's going to come out really good. But yeah, the only other kind of thing was just our news briefs. Don't forget, we have privacyguides.org/news, which is also available on ActivityPub. So like Mastodon, PixelFed, whatever your thing of choice is, at Privacy News at mastodon.plus. There's also an RSS feed. But yeah, there's the weekly data breach roundup. I think, no, we did not cover the story, but there's a, you know, Meta's little internal AI training keylogger backfired. Kansas City is pushing for facial recognition on public transit. So yeah, some good stories there from Freya this week. But I think yeah, like Jordan said, it was a really slow week, which is kind of why we're leaning into it and doing this more relaxed episode. But that's all we had going on this week. But all this is made possible, as well as upcoming stuff that we're working on, is made possible by supporters. So if you want, you can sign up for a membership or donate at privacyguides.org. You can go to privacyguides.org/donate, and it'll take you right there. You can also pick up some swag at shop.privacyguides.org. And Privacy Guides is a nonprofit which researches and shares privacy-related information and facilitates a community on our forum and matrix where people can ask questions and get advice about staying private online and preserving their digital rights. And on that note, I think we're going to hop over to the forum and take another question.
Yeah, so I got this other question here from Anonymous. 96 days until lockdown. How are things tracking regarding keep Android open? So I guess kind of a recap in case anyone hasn't seen this. I feel like everyone in our community might have seen this at this point, but let me just kind of read what the website says. Your phone is about to stop being yours. 96 days until lockdown, beginning is September 2026, and a silent update, non-consensually pushed by Google, will block every Android app whose developer hasn't registered with Google, signed their contract, paid up, and handed over their government ID. So this has kind of been an ongoing thing. I feel like we talked about this originally when it came out, like probably around a year ago, I would say. It's kind of been brewing since then. There hasn't really been too much of an update as far as I'm aware, which is kind of frustrating actually, because I feel like a lot of people have been opposing this, which is good, right? We're certainly in support of keep Android open. I believe we might even be listed on this website, possibly.
I think we are. I think we signed the open letter. I'll look for it.
Yeah, so we definitely are in support of this whole measure here. I think it's It's super important to stop this sort of stuff. This kind of ties back a little bit to like what I was saying before about companies having too much control. When there's an organization like Google that basically controls AI. I mean, sorry, controls Android. I don't know why I said AI. I think I've got AI on the mind a little bit. So Android, yeah, they basically can do these sort of shifts, right? They can basically create an ecosystem where only the apps that Google wants to be allowed access, right? So this is kind of a problem because, individual developers and small teams won't be able to publish apps because it costs money. There's also financial restrictions because, some people sometimes forget that like the US dollar is actually quite a strong currency. Like if you go to other countries in the global south, that money might not be worth the same amount. It might be like two years of pay. Like it could be a ridiculous amount of money for some people. And also just like restricting people's access to using whatever app they want on their device. And as far as I know, there hasn't really been too much of an update on this, unless you've got anything to add on it, Nate.
No, I was gonna say that I haven't really heard anything either. I know yeah, some websites like my website, The New Oil, I've got the little banner up top. Just real quick, not to like self promo, but just real quick, I'll show you guys what it looks like. But yeah, I've got this little banner up top that says Android will become a locked platform, and there's a countdown. So just trying to do my best part to spread the word as best I can. But yeah, I weirdly have not heard much either, which is weird because this is one of those things that is just like wildly, wildly unpopular. I don't know a single person other than Google who's been like, this is pretty. And the closest I've heard is me saying that sideloading is a serious problem in some parts of the world, specifically like Southeast Asia. I know is a really big problem where like that's how a lot of scammers will like, oh, go download this like side loaded. And for the record, yes, I know we shouldn't be using the term side loaded. Should be installing, but like go download this third party APK and install this this Bitcoin wallet or whatever. Or it's like, oh, this is like a premium version of WhatsApp. I don't know. There's a bunch of different ways they do it. But my point being is like, I know that it is a problem in some parts of the world, but even then it's like, man, this is a really heavy handed way to deal with this that it's almost like, I don't want to say they are being malicious because we've definitely seen companies do dumber things and not realize they were being dumb. But it's one of those things where it's like, how can you not realize what a slippery slope this is and how much of a detrimental impact this will have? And it's such a shame because like Android is like notorious for being an open ecosystem, right? Like that's what drew a lot of people to Android is like you can tinker with it, you can put different launchers on it. It's easier to be a developer. Like back in the day, like these days, it's really weird. It's kind of flipped. Like these days, there are some apps that are like iPhone only, but they're not on Android. They're either like iPhone only or they're both. Usually, not always. But back in the early days of smartphones, it was the exact opposite. Like everybody was on Android because it was like free and open and it was easier to code for Android. And the iPhone restrictions were so high that it's like, yeah, it's not worth iPhone. But I guess the market share has switched so much. But my point being is like, Android was always this like super open, super tinker friendly, developer friendly. And I've even seen some people like, I don't know how serious they are, but I've seen some comments. It's like, man, if this goes through, I'm just like, I'm switching to iPhone because what's the point? Like the only thing I liked about Android was that it was open. And if they're just going to turn it into iPhone, why would I not go with iPhone? So yeah, I mean, I don't necessarily agree with that, but it's just, it's definitely, it's like, what are they doing? Like, this is such a weird, I don't know. Yeah, but I haven't heard any updates.
Yeah, I think people are saying like, "Oh, it's just what Apple does. Like, we can just, it's fine. This is what Apple does. We can just let it happen." It's like they even like talk about this on the website. It says like Apple has been a walled garden from day one. People choose Android because it's different. Apple does it too. Is a race to the bottom. Like, we don't want, if we can have one platform that's like usable, it's better than having no platform that's usable. So yeah, it's interesting. I kind of wonder how this is going to play with the EU's Digital Markets Act because Apple is kind of being forced in the EU to allow for installing installing apps from third-party app stores and open a lot of stuff up. It seems like the pressure hasn't been quite enough though to like force this in the entire world. It's just kind of only applying to the EU, which I guess kind of makes sense because Apple is like a trillion-dollar company. They can afford to screw around with like making multiple versions of their operating system. But yeah, so it's not great. We're definitely opposed to this whole situation, but it's unfortunate we haven't really heard too much of an update on this from Google, at least. Silence from Google.
I was gonna say, and it's like I don't want to make this political, but I feel like it's almost because you mentioned like with all the stuff going on in Europe about being forced to open up their system, but like I feel like a lot of this has to do with the fact that at least here in the US, we have a very pro business administration right now. And companies are really getting away with a lot of stuff. Like there's investigations that were open before Trump came into office that have been shut down now. And like, I almost feel like it's them being like, yeah, we can get away with it now. Like, if the administration was being a little bit harsher on businesses and forcing that, because I mean, didn't they just lose like an anti-monopoly lawsuit or something like that? So it's just, yeah, it's like they see an opportunity and they're going for it, which is unfortunate to the detriment of everybody.
Yeah, I do think like the EU's got like they have their own interests, right? Like they're not doing this EU digital markets thing just because like they want it to be a better experience for everybody. It's like, no, no. You're doing this to like, weaken American tech companies' influence in your region, right? Like, which is good, right? Like I think countries should have like sovereignty. They shouldn't be relying on tech products from a single country, which is like as much as people don't want to admit it, like literally like 90% of the internet is just from America. So like, like everyone's on Google, everyone's on Facebook, everyone's on Snapchat. Like all these platforms are like American tech corporations. So it kind of makes sense, but yeah, it can have goofy consequences like, making things not as secure as they could be, but I think it's definitely an interesting balancing act. I definitely have seen that things are definitely loosening up a bit in the US at the moment.
And also the actual backbone of the internet. I'm on the Wikipedia page right now, and like 50% of the tier 1 ISPs, which are like the top level ISPs that literally provide the cables that go between continents, like I swear about 50% of them are US. So, and that's not, what's this, fiber out? Oh, that's not even counting how much actual cable they control. That's just like how many different companies there are. So yay. Lumen Technologies. Hey, when is the next season of Severance coming out? Anyways.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think also people are definitely wary of changes and like, I think I think people are starting to realize that yeah, the US government is a little bit unpredictable at the moment, so they don't really want to rely on them too much, which, it kind of makes sense. So, I don't know. It's good to acknowledge though that these things probably need to change at some point, but it definitely seems like at least right now everything is basically still run through the United States, which can be a problem, but hasn't been so far, but it could be a problem in the future.
For sure. Before we move on into the next story, somebody on YouTube, and maybe Bob's your uncle, maybe, just maybe. You mentioned the Canadian news. We did cover this last week, but yeah, there's Bill C-22, which just I think has passed like part of your government, but has not fully passed yet. But the government in a classic, they've tried to paint tinfoil hat privacy fears. For valuing your privacy. You're crazy. So yeah, we did cover that, I think, last week or the week before, but that is something definitely to keep on your radar, especially for Canadians. Please contact your politicians. This is literally an encryption backdoor. Like there's already a bunch of services like Signal, DuckDuckGo, NordVPN, which we don't recommend, but just to kind of show you, like they've all said that they're either going to limit services or leave Canada entirely if this passes. And it's a backdoor, which I know I say this every time, but we have proof thanks to Salt Typhoon, or maybe it's Volt Typhoon. I think it's Salt Typhoon. I should look that up and refresh myself one of these days. But that was when China hacked the US's telecoms infrastructure using a backdoor that only the good guys are supposed to use. And so we know that these things do not work, and they are not only for the good guys. We have actual it happened proof. And for some reason, politicians keep pushing that lie. And yeah, this is a classic. It's called a thought terminating cliche where like we make you look bad. That's why they do the whole protect the children thing, because then if you protest this, it's so easy to be like, wow, what do you hate children? So yeah, definitely keep an eye out for that if you're Canadian, and please try to I mean, do your like I can't do anything. I'm not Canadian, but you know what I mean? Like it's let's I hope that doesn't pass because that's not good.
I think another thing that's obviously this person, you being a Canadian, you probably already know this, but the Canadian Parliament just went on summer break, so like this is the perfect time to like get out there and actually make some noise about this. It's, as far as I know, it still needs to go through. It still needs to go through the Canadian Parliament, I believe. Like it's been approved, but it's not like passed actually yet. So
the
I'm not
House
really
of Commons passed it. Now it needs to go to the Senate and then presumably the Prime Minister or whoever's in charge there.
Yeah. So it still needs to go through more process. So, everyone's on break now. So, get out there. I think that'll be, I do want to say like the previous bills that have, I think it's C2, Bill C2 was another one that was going through Canada, and it was also a similar type of thing. It was accessing, I think it was to do with strengthening borders, but it had a whole bunch of like really terrible privacy concessions in there as well. And that got sent back. So I think, get out there. If you're from Canada and you actually are able to get out there and do some, there might be someone organizing protests and stuff. I'm not sure, but definitely send some messages to your representatives as well. That can help. Hopefully it doesn't actually get put into effect, because yeah, like Nate was saying, it's like all these massive privacy companies are saying like they're going to leave the country if it passes. So that's kind of a good indication that something is a really bad idea.
Yeah, that was C2. So yeah. So all right. Well, on the topic of governments and bad ideas, I think we'll move into the next story, which is about the White House app, which auto downloads to government phones and can't be uninstalled. So this story interests me in particular because I think there's always like a really, I think it's a really valid debate and a struggle that I think a lot of us have as privacy interested people, where there's a certain amount of privacy that you give up with an employer, right? There's a certain level of privacy that they have to, at least here in the US, like they have to report your earnings for taxes and they have to verify your employment, like, are you eligible to work and citizenship status and stuff like that. And, I think that's kind of unavoidable for most people. Like a handful of people are very lucky and you can like start your own freelancing business or something. But as a former freelancer, I can tell you that is not always easy and not right for everyone. So there's always kind of like a bit of a struggle between like, okay, it's your employer's computer and they have a right to do whatever they want to their computer versus like you have a right to privacy. And I think this is like, this article talks a lot about how this app is really unpopular for a lot of political reasons. Like, I'm not trying to be political, but just to give you some examples, like there's a button within the app that allows users to text President Trump, which autofills a text bubble reading greatest president ever, which is definitely not something that is very insecure to do. And somebody said it's shooting pure, unadulterated propaganda into our veins. So, I mean, there's that. But I mean, from a privacy perspective, like this app, we've known for a while that this app has a lot of concerns. Like here, further down, it gets into April, back in April. Shortly after the app launched, cybersecurity experts flagged several concerns, including the fact that the app initially shared users' locations and IP addresses with third parties. And if I remember correctly, it was like pinging them like every 30 seconds with your location, which is completely insane. Like that is basically real-time surveillance. They said that it goes through, or it was developed by this Ohio-based company called 45 Press, which is obviously has a certain political leaning there. They say that they specialize in expert WordPress development, design, hosting, e-commerce, and so much more. I'll be honest, I don't know if this matters. They say that the founder also runs an X account described as a website directory of historical and paranormal locations. Yeah, and like I'm actually going to take their side on this one. Like I like to watch a good trashy ghost story. Like, who cares? That doesn't mean I don't know how to do my job. Um, Although not to be political, I will say we have seen a lot of these alt-right tech companies like Parler and whatnot and Gab have a lot of data breaches. So I would argue that maybe they're not always great with security, but I digress. They said that the app incorporates a widget created by a Russian-based company called Elfsight, which they said there was a vulnerability found. Oh, yes, expose the personal information of White House officials. They also, this was one where I kind of had to put two and two together, but they pointed out that like when you remove this app, it just comes back. And this happens to State Department phones as well, which this is where I had to put two and two together. The State Department is usually the one handling spies in foreign countries. So we're forcing this app onto phones, potentially including of spies, our spies in foreign countries. And I'm trying so very hard not to be political right now, but like, you know, they asked the State Department whether these concerns, if they had concerns about the security of devices of foreign diplomats abroad. The spokesperson said the agency takes cybersecurity and protection of department-related issue, blah, 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 is a PR response. I'm not even going to bother reading it. It was a garbage PR response that didn't actually say anything. And, you know, again, I'm not trying to be super political, but this administration has shown they're not always on the ball when it comes to thinking ahead about cybersecurity and privacy issues. So, I mean, this is... I know it's like I'm not doing a very good job of not being political, but this is not just like, well, it's government phones and they have a right to do that. It's like, I'm really worried about like who is getting access to this data. Why is it pinging this data so much? Is it sharing this data with third parties, potentially hostile countries? Like Trump has, it seems, we could be wrong. We'll see what happens tomorrow. Trump seems to have come around and maybe he's not quite as close as with Putin as he used to be. Which, you know, on the one hand, you could argue is a good thing, depending on your political views. But also, again, there was that one, like one of the people who makes this app is Russian. So it's like, where is this data going? It's just, I don't know, man. This is really unfortunate. I think it's pretty crazy. I don't know. I think I've said plenty there. Did I miss anything or did anything about this jump out at you that was worth discussing?
I think this is funny. This is pretty funny. I think it is kind of like one of those things where it's like, why exactly? Like, why is this need to be installed on every device? It's like, I don't know. I feel like Trump has a little bit of an ego. Like, I don't know, maybe he thinks that every government employee needs to have like a direct line of information to their phone, I guess. But this is like you said, like it's kind of a security risk as well, because like this random app that we don't even know anything about that has like a Russian like links, like Russian assets in it, and it's installed on every government employee's phone. Like, that's I think, you know, obviously this would be a lot worse if it was like forcing it to be installed on people's personal devices, but like, yeah, this is a government issued device, right? So it's not like it's that bad in that respect. I think unfortunately, you kind of give up any privacy when you're doing something for work, right? Like if your work, I mean, it should be that your work supplies you with devices to do your work, right? That should be how it is, but I know that's not the case in every country. I'm not sure if that's the case in the US. Maybe it isn't. So, but obviously if you're working for the government, then that's a whole other thing, right? So yeah, I don't know. This is just kind of bizarre, actually. It's just kind of bizarre. Like, I'm not really sure why they thought that this would need to be installed on every person's device. Like, I could understand if it was like every government employee needs to have Trump Messenger on their phone. I'd be like, okay, well, you know, it's like, I can understand that, like, because they need to communicate, right? But this is just like an app that has like some, like you said, like there's unadulterated propaganda or whatever. Like, you know, like there's just a whole bunch of like not really that relevant stuff in the app that doesn't really seem that useful. It's just increasing the security risk for no reason. Like it doesn't really compute to me. Like I'm not really sure what the purpose of this is exactly. Like, is it to, you know, make government employees be up to date on information about the government? Maybe, I would say maybe, but
So yeah, it's first of all to comment on something you said. So legally in the US, a company cannot force you to download an app or something on your personal device. But generally speaking, especially smaller companies, they don't have the money to give you your own device. And especially for like lower ranking jobs, like, you know, if you're, not to malign anybody flipping burgers at McDonald's, but if you're flipping burgers at McDonald's, the company's not going to give you an iPhone just to like clock in or whatever. Um, and it kind of becomes one of those, like, again, not to be too political, but it becomes like a class struggle thing where it's like, okay, you desperately need a job. This is the first interview you've had in months, which is a potentially true story here in the US based on some of the stories I've heard from fellow job seekers. I don't know why I said fellow, but job seekers. And, you know, it's like, okay, we're hiring you, but you have to download this app. Are you really in a position to say no? Like, you don't really have a lot of meaningful choice there, in my opinion. But legally, technically, you can say no, or they have to provide you with a phone. But the government, I think, usually does provide a phone, especially at the federal level. They tend to have a lot of money. I remember when I joined the military, my recruiter had a government phone. I did not, but he was, you know, recruiter was a special job where they did get a government phone. So they probably do have them. They probably wouldn't be forced to download this onto their personal device. But yeah, it's like you said, it's so like, they said this seems to be the same version as the one that's available to the public. So this is not like a special version of the White House app. And it says that it promises a mixture of, quote, real-time updates, live events, and direct access to the presidency. The article says that under the social section of the app, users can see posts from the White House Twitter account, Trump's own Truth Social posts, and videos shared on an official TikTok and Instagram account, among other platforms. The news section of the app includes White House press releases, briefings, and fact sheets, as well as selected articles from Fox, Breitbart, Reuters, the New York Post, and other outlets, all of which paint a positive picture of the administration's policies or attack Democrats. So, I mean, again, struggling as best I can to put personal opinions and political commentary aside, you're absolutely right. Like, what purpose does this serve? Especially because, based on my limited time working in government, anything important is an email. Like, I cannot imagine that you're going to get a ping from this app's notifications that's like, by the way, you're getting a raise, or like, you know, like they've changed the menu in the cafeteria today. Like, I just cannot imagine what this app could possibly tell you that you couldn't figure out, either A, by just reading the news yourself from your outlet of choice, or B, that you won't get in an email from your boss. So yeah, it's a very strange, as far as I know, I could be wrong, but I don't think any other administration has ever like done this. And I know, relatively speaking, we haven't had a whole lot of digital presidencies. I think Obama was like the first really digital president, so to speak. But yeah, this is definitely it's a choice. We'll say that.
Yeah, I think the easy way to get through to people about this, you know, depending on, I know there's people out there who, you know, probably don't agree with us on our political views, but like, you know, I think we can all agree that like a crappy, poorly coded like app that has like malware in it is probably not a good idea to have on government employee devices, you know, especially like you said, people in other countries, like, you know, spies, government employees, all sorts of stuff. Like sounds like a national security risk to me. That's what it sounds like.
That's what jumped out at me, is like, I guarantee you, from that garbage PR response that the White House gave Wired or Ars Technica here, it's like, if it wasn't on foreign devices, I feel like they would say that. It's, you know, something to that effect. But this whole, like, we take cybersecurity and protection of department issued devices, not personnel, by the way, just devices, any applications made available on the blah, 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 blah. It's like, so yes. So right now, there is somebody operating in China that keeps getting this crap pushed to his phone every freaking night when he removes it, and you're putting his life at risk. And I need to stop there.
Yeah, I don't really think I have too much more to add here. I think this is, for people outside the US, this is kind of funny, but like for people in the US, you know, this is kind of a national security concern, I think. So
No, I mean,
definitely.
I'm with you. Like, as somebody who's not working in government, it's like, it's easy for me to just put my head in my hands and like, but it's like, dude, like, you're putting people at risk. It's
Yeah, exactly. I think also, I guess we can dive into the next story here. We kind of talked about that for a while, unless you have any more to add, Nate.
Nah, I'm good.
Cool. All right, so this next story, 50% of LG and Samsung smart TVs embed residential proxies. So thousands of smart TV applications available on LG and Samsung platforms contain software that turns devices into residential proxy nodes. Researchers at Spur Intelligence identified proxy SDKs in 2,000 of 6,000 WebOS and Tizen apps they analyzed. So I guess if you don't know what a residential proxy is, it's basically like a VPN node, but it's in a residential IP. So basically, turning someone's smart TV into a VPN node. And the reason why this is actually useful to, threat actors is because a lot of times these residential IP addresses aren't actually, they have good reputation. They actually don't have restrictions because a lot of these, VPN IP addresses, a lot of times they're abused by, people doing nefarious stuff. So, when you have a residential proxy IP address, you're actually bypassing a lot of the issues that VPNs have. And a lot of times these residential proxies are even used in botnets and DDoS attacks. Having all these thousands of Tizen and LG TVs just like all DDoSing somebody. So, that is another thing they can do. I guess also kind of, you know, reading more from the article here, researchers found that Bright Data Ltd, and Bright SDK were associated through 367 proxy-enabled apps, while Honeygrain UAB, an Oxylabs subsidiary, appeared as the publisher of 16 applications, and most of those apps were identified as simple games, screensavers, clocks, and utility tools. And basically, the way these apps would work is they would obtain consent basically through a one-time prompt during the setup process. And it would basically say like, oh, do you want to allow network access or whatever? And yeah, it would, the report cites examples in which users are given a choice between viewing advertisements and allowing the app to monetize their internet connection via a proxy network. And I guess this is also kind of a massive security risk, right? You're basically allowing some random company to have access to your internet connection to make connections to other people outside the network. So yeah, you don't want like random traffic associated with your IP address, right? Like it could be people doing stuff that's illegal, it could be people DDoSing. You don't want your residential IP address associated with that activity. So yeah, the article also says it can raise privacy concerns because proxy-enabled TV apps could create security risks because they operate on the same network as routers, printers, cameras, NAS devices, and computers. And if a proxy provider's safeguards fail or are bypassed, attackers could potentially gain a foothold inside some home networks. So I kind of shared this a little bit with people in my life because unfortunately I know people that are using LG and Samsung televisions, and honestly I wouldn't be surprised if some of them actually had these residential proxy apps installed. So it's kind of concerning that this is so popular and it actually exists on so many apps on these TVs. Do you have anything you wanted to add as well, Nate?
No, I think there's a couple of things. Like you said, it's very, like, I'll admit on one of our TVs, I did kind of poke around the app stores a little bit, and I did look at like, oh, here's a really cute, it's the Roku TV, I'll say that. And I'll say why I said that in a minute. I poke around and I look at like, oh, there's a really cute, like it's a screensaver of foxes or whatever. It's super cute. But then eventually I just decided like, yeah, but I like this standard Roku one where it just shows the city and there's like, you get to spot all the movie references and stuff in the background. So, but my point being is like, yeah, I feel like a lot of the time, especially with Android, we talk about like, oh, there was this malicious app that was removed and it's been downloaded like 500,000 times. And it's actually like 13 different apps that all have the same malware in it. And when you look at the list of apps, in my personal opinion, it's some of the dumbest crap I've ever seen. It's like, oh, it's like a flashlight app. And it's like, your phone already has a flashlight. What are you doing? Or, it's like an AI powered PDF scanner, or like just all these weird things that I'm like, why are people even downloading this? But things like, I don't know who's playing games on their TV, but like screensavers, clocks, utilities. I'm like, okay, I could see why people download that kind of stuff. So it really sucks. And, yeah, it's just a reminder that especially with these IoT devices, at the top of the show, we talked about, like desktop versus, mobile device and like privacy and security. And like with these IoT devices, you get neither. Like there's so little meaningful stuff you can do to them in terms of like hardening them or adding privacy protections. There's the classic joke that like the S in IoT stands for security. And if you're confused, just think about it for a second, because I didn't get it the first time either. And so it's like it's one of those things where it's like less is definitely more with these kind of devices. Like, just stick to the official apps that you really need to use. And I mean, I'll note, like, yeah, in a perfect world, like, spin up a Jellyfin server, right? And just like try to keep it in house, and then it doesn't even need to hit the WAN. But basic things, changing the default passwords, trying to put like a DNS on your router that's known to block malware. That's not 100% safe, but it's all these things add up. And I think the last thing I want to say, just because I can never resist a chance to take a shot at Samsung, the article does point out that because in these, I think these particular ones they focused it on, like Bright Data, Massive, and Oxy Labs, I think these are actual like advertising companies that technically aren't doing anything illegal. They're just being really shady and not super transparent, but they're not malware by the technical definition. But they do know that where did it go? They say one of the reasons that this is popular, especially with LG and Samsung, Amazon's developer rules prohibit apps that facilitate third-party proxy services, while Roku has reportedly blocked applications that use the Bright SDK and similar technologies. Spur found no equivalent public restrictions from LG or Samsung. So, yeah, basically the LG and Samsung are letting this happen, which is super unfortunate. But yeah, it's there was one other thing I wanted to say. You're absolutely right about a lot of the time when we talk about like compromised IoT devices like routers, for example, we try to point out partially as like, here's how one way that you can find out if this has happened to you, but also like just to kind of, I think I do it to kind of motivate people. If your router, for example, has been hijacked by a crypto miner, you'll notice a slowed network. So that's not only one way you'll know, maybe not know, but you might suspect, but also to kind of motivate people like, yeah, you should care about this because your internet's going to slow down and that sucks. But yeah, Jordan noted that like this could even come back to you. Like there was a story that I could try to go find if anybody cares, but there was a story about like a British couple that the police showed up at their door and basically accused them of downloading CSAM, like child sexual abuse material. And it turned out that somebody, I think it might have even been their neighbor, like hijacking their Wi-Fi or something, but somebody somehow had gotten access to their router and done illegal things from their router. So it all pointed back to them. And thank God the family was cleared. Like the cops spoke to them and the cops were like, okay, clearly this was not you. I think they found the malware. They got it all cleared away. But still, it's like those are a very difficult, a very good book. Not to ramble too much, but what's it called? Tracers in the Dark by Andy Greenberg, who is a fantastic tech journalist for Wired, I believe. This book takes place in 4 parts, and it's basically talking about cybercrime. The last part of the book specifically focused on like CSAM sites, and they talked about the first person that the cops, like not the first ever, but the cops he spoke to, they started this new operation to take down a site. And the first person that they like arrested, so they arrested him, they booked him, and they're like, you're charged with this. Okay, like go home. And because, if you don't know, 90% of the time you get arrested, they let you out and they're just like, come back for your court date. When they let him go, he jumped out of his high-rise apartment building, to put it in a way that YouTube will let us get away with. And that was the moment that all the cops realized it's like, we need to, and I'm pretty sure he was guilty, but they realized like, we need to make 100% sure that we're guilty if we arrest people, because this destroys people's lives. Like this dude was basically like, my life is over. I can't go back to work. And again, he was guilty, but it's like, that's my point, is like, even though this family was cleared, those are the kind of things that like stay with you. And it doesn't matter how many times you say like, oh, but the cops said we were good. It's like, people are like, did they really? Sure. Like, yeah. So I don't know. I'm not trying to scare people, but it's this stuff does have serious consequences and it's scary stuff. So be careful what you put on your devices and what devices you let into your home and which ones you let on the internet in general. Thank you for coming to my TED Talk. Tip your servers.
I would say, yeah, I don't know, maybe this is bad advice, but I would say probably try not to use the integrated operating system included on your smart TV. I feel like a lot of times it's got a lot of issues. Like it'll be, not secure. It'll allow installation of malware like that. It's usually not getting security updates as well. And it depends. Maybe you're logging into a bunch of stuff on your smart TV, and or those accounts could get compromised, or like we saw in this story, like a bunch of apps have just got like a residential proxy included, which I think most people would say they don't want on their TV. And there's options outside of using the operating system included on your television, or you could do something really wild. You could like not use a television. I mean, but maybe that's too far. But I think there's definitely issues with this sort of stuff. We haven't really looked too much into like what the options are like at Privacy Guides. Like we don't have any formal recommendations, I guess. But I mean, I think you'd probably be a lot better off if you went with something from like a major manufacturer like Google or Apple. Like as much as I dislike Google and Apple, like you're not going to have an issue with an app being a residential proxy or like getting software updates. So yeah, I think it's definitely something that you should try and think about. A lot of people kind of forget when it comes to IoT devices, like, is this device getting updates? Is this whole process of installing apps, is it like, are these apps vetted? Is this an official app? I think it's a good thing to think about if you haven't really thought about using, securing that area of your life, I guess. So, I mean, I don't really have more to add to this, but I think it's definitely worth checking. And, the best, I think, process here would just be using as little apps as possible. Just like install absolutely the bare minimum that you need. Don't install screensavers, don't install like random apps that are, you don't know what they do. So just be careful out there. But yeah, don't really have too much more to add.
Yeah, I mean, me personally, I'm the kind of person like if the screensaver comes on, that probably means I need to turn the TV off because I'm doing other stuff. But yeah, I'm with you. Like the only things we have installed on our TVs are Jellyfin, Crunchyroll, because my wife does actually watch a lot of anime, and Apple Music, because I'm the one who will be like, oh, okay, I'm sitting out here. Or it's more like if company comes over, like we're not really watching TV, but we just want some background noise on. So I'll just put on like some music. But yeah, it's definitely the only other thing I wanted to add is I think if you're reasonably tech savvy, which I think most of our viewers are, maybe one of those DNS options that lets you see what network connections are happening, like NextDNS, Pi-hole. I know IVPN's got their like mod DNS or whatever now, like something like that. I don't know. Some of them I think don't really give you a lot of control over it, but I know like mod DNS and Pi-hole, for example, you'll be able to see where it's connecting and block it, which I mean, really the important thing is to know like, oh, this is making connections. Like what the hell is this random Russian IP address that it's connecting to? And I mean, that alone will let you know what's going on. But yeah, I think, I don't know if I want to say too much. Somebody well-known in our privacy chat was actually asking about this very specific article earlier. And we were kind of talking about what sort of defense is, like how can you detect it and stuff like that. So hopefully they will dig up some stuff in the research and maybe we can share it with you guys about how to detect this stuff and defend against it. But I don't want to say who and too much more because I don't want to commit them to something if they don't turn anything up. But yeah, that's all I got. So yeah, I mean, it's again, it's been kind of a more relaxed episode and we've been taking viewer questions, but we'll definitely shift over to the official Q&A segment in a little bit. So if you've been holding on to any questions or you've just been kind of listening in the background and anything popped into your head, go ahead and leave your questions either in the chat, or we do have a forum that I've been keeping open in another window and keeping an eye on, forum post, I mean. But in the meantime, we're going to hop over to the community forum. There's always a lot of activity, and there were definitely a lot of posts this week. But this week specifically, I think the one I wanted to share the most came from one of our regulars. And the title of this post says, "Deflock groups may be organizing near you." And I think I wanted to share this just kind of as a shout out and like a call to action for anybody who doesn't know. So You guys probably know about Flock, the license plate reader. Very wildly unpopular company with a I live in America. I'm going to say a completely insane CEO, and has a lot of hot takes about how all privacy people just like want crime and lawlessness to win. Clearly, I love crime. It's my favorite. That's why I've never publicly endorsed piracy, because I love crime so much. Anyways, so yeah, one of our members has posted this forum post that is a deflock groups may be organizing near you, and basically they say if you're living in the U.S. and you're concerned about flock cameras, there's a good possibility that there's local groups at either the state or the city level, and they may also care about additional rights besides just flock. And they basically just left a list of local groups that they're aware of, and I am so sorry, but I am going to read off the list of states here very quickly. So if you think you heard yours, go ahead and check the newsletter in the show notes and see if it's in there. But Alabama, Arizona, California, Colorado, Connecticut, Washington, D.C., Florida, Georgia, Iowa, Illinois, Indiana, Kansas, Louisiana, Minnesota, Missouri, North Carolina, Nevada, Ohio, South Carolina, Tennessee, Texas, Virginia, Washington State, and Wisconsin. And of course, you can always start your own. So yeah, I guess I just wanted to share that because I know we do have we're trying to encourage people to get involved and speak up wherever possible. And that may be a good starting point. If you're like not really sure where to go and you live in one of those areas, definitely check this link that they left here and see if you can get connected with a local group. I'll go ahead and say it. I'm on the board of EFF Austin. I know I mentioned that before. We have done some work with the No ALPRs chapter in Texas. Super awesome people. And that is how I ended up on the board. Was I was just like, I don't really have a lot of money to donate, but I want to get involved. And I found like a local digital rights group, and I just started showing up and attending meetings and volunteering my time. And we've been able to do some really cool stuff. Mostly thanks to other board members, not really so much myself, but you know, I help keep us organized, I guess. So yeah, it's definitely, in my opinion, I mean, I'm biased, but I think it's worth it to get involved in these kind of groups. So yeah, I think that's all I got on that one. Do you have anything you wanted to add about that, Jordan?
I think it is kind of important to get involved locally. Like a lot of people, I think they kind of think that, you know, this is a privacy thing. Like, oh, I'll just install uBlock Origin and run Linux and GrapheneOS and like not do anything. But it's like there's all these issues that are going on in the real world too, that are super important. And you know, there's not that many deflock groups right now. Like you've got what 50 states, and there's not even 20 maybe.
I was gonna say, is that maybe just under half, give or take?
Okay, so definitely
a lot of room for improvement.
Yeah, definitely a bit of room to improve. And you know, even looks like some states have got, you know, like 5 or 6. So get out there. You know, maybe if there's no group in your local area, you know, get on it. start a chapter or something.
And I just want to say smaller states too. Like obviously you would look at a state like California that's just massive and you would expect to see multiple groups. But I mean, like Arizona has 2, Colorado has 2, Florida has like 5, which, okay, I guess Florida's a little bit bigger of a state, but Illinois got like 5, Virginia's got 4, Ohio's got 5. Did I say Virginia? Virginia's got like 7. Holy crap. Virginia's not that big of a state. So yeah, I mean, yeah, there's room for everybody for sure. So
it also does seem like some of these groups are like they're groups for other stuff, but they also are against this stuff. So, you know, if you're involved in a local political group, maybe you can get them on board with this sort of stuff. It looks like I did see there was one in Virginia DSA. So maybe see if you're a part of a local like political group, you can get involved with that, or, you know, start your own thing.
Yeah, and I mean, just to put it out there, we have the privacyguides.org/activism talks about like how to organize, how to, you know, it's not like a step-by-step, maybe, I don't know, that I don't want to commit, that might be a little too much, but maybe we should look into seeing if we can put out a guide about how to actually start a group. Because I mean, it's honestly, in my experience, granted limited experience, but it's not that hard. It's a patience game, because you have to like, okay, you have to go find a venue. which is usually not too hard. You can usually find some place that's willing to like, yeah, you guys can have like, you can go to a restaurant and it's like, you guys can have the back room like once a month or something. And then, but then from there, like the real challenge is just getting the word out and getting people to show up, I think. So it's not complicated. That's what it is. It's not hard, or it is hard, but it's not complicated. But I don't know. I think we should maybe look into that. I'm not making any promises, but I'll look into that and see if we can offer any advice there.
Yeah, there's public spaces, libraries, all sorts of places. They don't care about that sort of stuff. They'll let you, if you have a group, they'll let you, set up shop a little bit. So I think it's definitely very positive stuff. I think, we should try and make sure this gets more popular, because the more that this stuff gets more popular, the more normalized it is. I feel like some people, they hear the word like activist and they immediately recoil, which is a bit of a problem, right? Because, like this stuff isn't going to change if nobody does anything. So like, when we see all these like flock cameras being put up and then, nothing happens, it's like, well, you got to do something. You got to actually get out there and make some noise, because that's kind of how you get your rights, right? You have to fight for them. You don't just get them automatically. So, yeah, definitely important. Definitely check out privacyguides.org/activism if you're interested in learning more about that. But yeah, we're definitely not opposed to expanding the activism section. It's something we've been talking about. Possibly doing more improvements to that. But we kind of just, see how we go with that. I don't really have anything more to add on this. Was there anything else you wanted to cover on the forum this week?
No, it was a really busy week, but a lot of it, and personally, this actually makes me happy. A lot of it was like questions, especially from newbies. I feel like I saw a lot of questions from new people this week, which was makes me so happy personally that there's like new people getting into privacy. And like I am a firm believer that there are no stupid questions that are asked in good faith. So definitely use the search function, because the forum's been around for a long time and there's a good chance that somebody else has asked your question. But it's still like, if you do a search and it's not there, like, it's cool to see people like getting into privacy and learning is kind of what I'm getting at. But yeah, that was kind of all I saw in the forum. So I think we're good to open the floor if anybody's been holding on to any questions.
Definitely. I guess, yeah, I didn't really see any other stories in the forum this week either. Definitely been, we keep saying it, but like, yeah, it's been a kind of slow week, and it's very rare. I feel like it is so rare. Like we've been kind of working pretty hard since and we rarely get a week where we're like, oh, there's nothing we can talk about. There's not really any big story. So it's nice to, sometimes have a little bit of a more chill time, and talk about some more positive stuff as well. So that is good.
Yeah, I think one time when I was at Surveillance Report, when I was there, our episodes averaged about 30 to 45 minutes, depending on the week. And I think there was one time we literally had like an 11-minute episode because there was just no news at all that week. It was really weird. But, in the like 5 years I was there, that only happened once. So it does happen.
Definitely. Not really seeing any other questions, unless there's anything you really wanted to talk about this week.
Trying to think.
Yeah, I feel like we've covered most things. I'm not really seeing any other comments anywhere else either. So maybe we do wrap it up early this week.
I guess so. Yeah. I don't know why I want to talk about sci-fi, but what else is new? I always want to do that. That's all I got. Yeah. Okay. So yeah, we'll wrap it up a little bit early this week. Again, for the 10 millionth time, lighter week, but all the updates from This Week in Privacy will be shared on the blog every week. So sign up for the newsletter or subscribe with your favorite RSS reader if you want to stay tuned. Friendly reminder, I schedule that to go out as we go live. So that is also a good reminder to get a notification if you want that. And for people who prefer audio, we offer a podcast available on all podcast platforms and again through RSS. And this video will be synced to PeerTube. Privacy Guides is an impartial nonprofit organization that is focused on building a strong privacy advocacy community and delivering the best digital privacy and consumer technology rights advice on the internet. If you want to support our mission, you can make a donation on our website at privacyguides.org/donate. Alternately, to make a donation, you can go to privacyguides.org, click the red heart icon located in the top right corner of the page, should be on every page. You can contribute using standard fiat currency like debit or credit card, or you can donate anonymously using Monero or your favorite cryptocurrency. Becoming a paid member unlocks exclusive perks like early access to video content, priority access during the live stream Q&A on normal weeks. You'll also get early access to the show notes and a cool badge on your profile in the Privacy Guides forum and the warm, fuzzy feeling of supporting independent media. So thank you all so much for watching, and we'll be back next week with more news.